Hey there, Andy XL back with another podcast. Again, sticking in the fantasy realm with NFL this time. Having covered off quarterback, running back, and wide receiver in previous pieces, time to look at the tight ends. Um, it's rare to use two tight ends in your fantasy starting lineup due to the low scoring power of this position, outside of the very best ones, that is. According to my projections, the sixth best tight end in 2025 would be the 42nd ranked wide receiver and 32nd ranked running back in terms of point scoring power. So getting one of the top five will really help you, five or six, will really help you to construct a title winning team. But after that, they all become much of a muchness, so can be deprioritized against other positions. As I've done with the other positions, I've ranked the tight ends in tiers, starting with the ones that will score consistently highly, down through the lower end starting options to the bench fillers, bye week alternatives, and then one or two late round flyers that might work out for you. Um, so, as I say, I like to keep these to about 25 minutes in length, so I'll get through as many as I can as quickly as I can, and I'll crack on with tier one, which for me contains one tight end, and this is the standout guy for me, and reiterates that we've seen a changing of the guard at the tight end position because it's Brock Bowers of Las Vegas. Um, Bowles did pretty much what I expected of him as a rookie, putting up over 1,200 scrimmage yards with 5 touchdowns. With Devontae Adams no longer in Vegas, his share of the TDs in Vegas could increase in 2025, and he will be the best target for Geno Smith to find out of their receiving core. I have him well clear of the other tight ends, so he's in a tier all of his own, and I would definitely consider him as a first round pick in fantasy leagues. So yeah, I expected big things from him in his rookie season, and he delivered. And for me, he's going to deliver for many years to come. So we'll move swiftly on. Tier two. There's two guys in this. George Kittle. Kittle's averaged 70 yards a game or more in his last 6 seasons and has 31 TDs in his last 4 seasons. He's in a settled environment in San Fran, so there's no reason he should not once again be averaging in excess of 10 points a week in standard scoring leagues. Yeah, he misses some time occasionally, but when he's on the field, he's going to be one of the very best scoring tight ends. So he's still number two overall for me. Now, number three is somebody I'm really high on, way higher than most have in their ranking list. And it's another rookie, as Brock Bowers was last year. This is Tyler Warren of Indianapolis. I thought he was the clear top tight end in this draft class. And he's another draft candidate I was mega high on pre-draft. I see him as one of five generational talents to come out of this draft. The others being Abdul Carter, Mason Graham, Travis Hunter, and Ashton Gionte. Um, I'm not changing my view now that he lands in a similarly appealing spot to Bowers last year, as he will be the clear tight end one from day one for the Colts, who do not have a stellar wide receiver core either, as was the case for Bowers last season in Vegas. So now Warren is potentially as good an all-round tight end as Bowers, but possibly not quite as good a receiving tight end as him. But I still have him putting up over 900 scrimmage yards and 8 TDs in his rookie season. I just think this guy's really, really good, which immediately makes him an elite tight end in both the real and fantasy worlds. So if you're in dynasty leagues and you got a chance to get him, get him. But in year-on-year leagues, he's going to be one of the very best from day one for me. Don't don't leave it too late to get him. Um, I mean, consensus ranking he comes in outside of a starting tight end in fantasy. I just can't have that. So maybe you will get him a bit later on in drafts, but don't be afraid to go a couple of rounds early to get this guy for me. Right, tier three, another two guys in this. Sam Laporta of Detroit is my fourth overall ranked. In his 2 seasons in Detroit, Laporta has been just north and south of the 50-yard per game mark and has 17 touchdowns across those 2 seasons. There's no reason why he should not perform at a similar level in his third season. As I've said with other Detroit players, yeah, you got some coaching changes going on there, but on field, it's pretty much the same deal. So there's no reason why Laporta shouldn't deliver again. Number five, I'm a little bit lower on this guy than the consensus ranking, but still, he's still pretty good in my book at being the fifth overall. That's Trey McBride of Arizona. His yardage numbers went up significantly in 2024 as he was the clear number one target for Kyler Murray. Now, his TD production is far from great, and that was the case while he was at Colorado State. And with my expectation that Marvin Harrison takes a big step up in 2025, Marvin Harrison Jr., that is, McBride may see a slight dip in his targets and yardage too, but he's still one of the five tight ends to target early in fantasy drafts. They're the top five for me, and that's why I've got them clearly ahead. Um, Tier four, well, I've got five guys in this actually. There's a couple of caveats on the last two, which are interlinked, but I'll come to those. But first up, my sixth overall ranked is TJ Hockenson in Minnesota. He averages 48.8 yards per game across his 6 years in the NFL, but has modest touchdown production and did so at Iowa for his last 2 years in college too. In Minnesota, Jordan Jefferson and Jordan Addison are always going to leave fewer openings for a tight end. Addison, question mark, his off-field shenanigans. So Hockenson is the best of the result of the rest if you have not got one of the top five. For me, he's the next one to go after. Number 7 on my list is David Njoku of Cleveland. He's averaged 45 yards per game for the last 3 seasons in Cleveland, despite poor quarterback play. Whether that's going to change, because it's the quarterback picture in Cleveland still distinctly cloudy, and Njoku may also have more competition for tight end targets now that they've drafted Harold Fanning. But I still see him as one of those steady, dependable scoring tight ends worth owning if you've missed out on the top five. Right, number 8, and this really marks how we're seeing the changing of the guard in at tight end, because it's Travis Kelce. Previously in the Brock Bowers position of the undoubted number 1 and a first round fantasy draft pick, that's no longer the case. With 4 of my top 5 having 3 years in the NFL or less, that tells you there's been a changing of the guard. And as part of that, the days of Kelce being a lock as round one fantasy are behind us now. He's going to turn 36 early in week 5, of the 2025 season, and it surely has to be the case that his numbers will decline from here on in until he retires. In the last 3 seasons, his yards per game has gone from 78.7 to 65.6, and then 51.4 last season. If he continues to drop off at roughly that rate, 40 yards a game might be where he is in 2025. He will still likely be the guy Mahomes looks to, but his TD numbers have also been on the slide in the last 2 seasons, making him a similar proposition to Njoku in 2025 for me. Now, the last two in this tier, I said they're kind of interlinked in a way, even though they're currently on different teams. That's Jonnu Smith out of Miami and Pat Freiermuth in Pittsburgh. Now, there's trade rumours of Smith leaving Miami and going to Pittsburgh, hence the linkage. But if we deal with it, that they're staying where they are, and until we know otherwise, Smith was an absolute revelation for the Dolphins last season, having by far his best season in terms of targets, reception, and yardage in his 8th season in the NFL and his first in Miami. Whilst it would be remarkable if he reproduced those numbers again as a 30-year-old in 2025, he can be seen as another reliable veteran option at tight end in fantasy terms. So Pat Freiermuth is my number 10, rock solid tight end who averages 36 yards per game and 4.5 touchdowns a season across his 4 years at Pittsburgh. With reduced options at wide receiver last season and this coming one, he may be able to get above 40 yards per game and get close to the 7 TDs he's had in 2024. So again, a low-end good starting option for you to look at. That's the first 4 tiers. Then we get to tier 5. So we're getting into the much of a muchness area, as I said at the beginning now, as we look at the low end starting tight end prospects. Some may prefer to look at those in this tier with potential upside, as the downside is low when you consider these types, and they're only going to average around 7 points a week. So really, when you're looking at these, if you see any of these as having upside to them, it's worth taking the risk rather than arguing over whether one's going to be marginally better than the other. Um, so I'll start with my number 11 overall once I've had a quick drink. That's Kyle Pitts in Atlanta. So after a rookie season where he looked as good as Brock Bowers and Tyler Warren is likely to be, Pitts has settled into being a 35 to 40 yards a game tight end across the subsequent 3 seasons. He looks like he could be so much better than that, though. So if he could get back to 40, 45 yards per game, that would be more appropriate to his talent. I'm prepared to think he can do that. So having slightly higher in my list than others. Yeah, there's how's he going to work out with Michael Penix? How's that you know relationship that's had limited exposure? How's that going to work? Nobody knows. But I still think Pitts has got upside to him. At 12, I've got Mark Andrews, who's the reverse. I've got him lower than others. After a really slow start to 2024, he had just 6 receptions for 65 yards and no touchdowns after 4 games. He recovered to end the season, averaging just shy of 40 yards per game and notched 11 touchdowns in the other 12 games he appeared in. He clearly looked slower last season, though, to me, so maybe more dependent on his TD numbers than those in the tier above. And the arrival of DeAndre Hopkins could hurt those numbers to some degree too. So that's why I'm lower on Andrews than others might be. My number 13 is Jake Ferguson from Dallas. Until Dak Prescott got hurt halfway through last season, Ferguson was on target for a second 700-yard season. His numbers dropped off significantly without Prescott. So with Dak back in action, Ferguson could get back to 40 yards per game and end his TD drought was 2024 too. That was incredible that he didn't record a single touchdown, and surely that can't happen again in 2025. Number 14 on my list is Dallas Goedert of Philadelphia. He was just shy of 50 yards a game for the Eagles last season and averages 44 yards per game over his 7-year NFL career. So why is he not in the tier above? Firstly, his TD production is low. Secondly, his numbers were helped last season by both AJ Brown and Devonta Smith missing time. Thirdly, he himself has made just 36 appearances across the last 3 seasons. And finally, he's another 30-something tight end who may begin to decline from here on. Right, 15 on my list. I'm a bit high on this guy than most as well. Dalton Schultz out of Houston. He's been uber consistent in the last 3 seasons, registering between 53 and 59 receptions and between 10 and 10.8 yards per reception. Take the midpoint of that and you will get 56 receptions for 10.4 yards per reception, meaning 582 yards. And he has 24 TDs in his last 5 seasons. So 4 to 5 is what you can expect in 2025. Probably not good enough to make him a starting tight end for you, but certainly if you're looking to take a second tight end, you could do far worse than Schultz. Another one with potential upside now is Isaiah Likely out of Baltimore, who's my 16th ranked overall. As Mark Andrews is likely to continue to decline, Likely has a chance to pick up some of the slack at tight end for the Ravens. I know they're talking about a contract extension for him, which is a promising sign. His yards per game have seen a gentle rise across his 3 seasons. That continued in 2024, and it could continue in 25. He could at least reach 35 yards per game, and he has more potential upside than others in this tier for me. 17, one I'm a bit lower on than others, is Evan Engram, who's moved from Jacksonville to Denver. He was a 10 in his career. He was a 10 to 11 yards per reception guy in his time with the Giants. That dipped to 9 to 10 yards as he moved from them to Jacksonville, and then dipped again to around 8 yards of reception for his last 2 years with the Jags. So his yardage per reception is slipping. But he did see a marked rise in targets with Jacksonville. So what will Denver hold for him? Well, he's the clear tight end one for the Broncos. They do not possess high quality wide receivers, so he can expect a good number of targets and receptions. But he does turn 31 just before next season starts. So 8 yards of reception may well be all we can expect from him in that regard. So that makes him another dependable veteran, but probably with low upside. Similarly, Zach Ertz, who's my 18th ranked at Washington. Many, probably including myself, I did include myself, have pretty much written Earth off as a fading mid-30s veteran before he entered Jaden Daniels' cryogenic chamber last season. He will turn 35 in week 10 of the 25 season. So to expect him to repeat his remarkable efforts of 2024 will be a big ask, but he should still have another decent campaign as another reliable veteran type. Now, 19 on my list is the second rookie in this class, Colston Loveland, first round draft pick by the Bears. He's one with obvious potential upside from this tier, but you will have to take targets and receptions not only from Cole Kmet at tight end, but also from a strong trio of wide receivers. Pre-draft, I far preferred Warren as the top rookie tight end in this class, and I'm still in that camp, especially now he has an easier path to targets in Indy than Loveland looks likely to have in Chicago. So another drink for me now. Excuse me. My 20th ranked guy is Dalton Kincaid in Buffalo. His numbers dipped in his sophomore year. Whilst he may see some kind of bounce back in 25, I don't really expect him to return to the numbers of his strong rookie season. 21 is Mike Gesicki in Cincinnati. He'll turn 30 in week 5 and enjoyed an Indian summer type season with the Bengals last season. He would do well again in 2025 to match what he did last year, but he's one to keep an eye on. 22, Tucker Kraft in Green Bay. I'm lower on this guy than others. He was the third round pick of the Packers in 2023, with Luke Musgrave taking him round 2 the same year. Musgrave missed most of last season, and Kraft took advantage of that opportunity. But with Musgrave on his way back and all the options added at wide receiver for the Packers, I can see Kraft's share of the pie being significantly reduced in 2025. So I don't see him as a starting tight end option, more of a tight end 2 on your roster to fill in for bye weeks and injuries, etc. 23rd ranked on my list is Juwan Johnson at New Orleans. Tyler Shugg made good use of a big wide receiver in Ja'Corey Brooks and 3 tight ends at Louisville, and Johnson could be the sort of big safety valve receiving option that a rookie tight end like Shugg is going to look for. Having established himself as the leading receiving tight end for the Saints, Johnson may have some upside to him in 2025. Final one, just creeping into tight end 2 area, is Cade Otton in Tampa Bay. He only averages 30 yards per game over his 3 seasons in Tampa, but he did average 43 yards a game in 2024. It may have been helped in that regard by Chris Godwin missing 10 games, and with the wide receiver group looking uber strong for 2025, Otton may revert to yards per game more akin to his first 2 seasons, so a low end tight end 2. I'll quickly whip through some possible late round flyers here because, as I said, outside of the top 5 or 6 in fantasy tight ends, there's not a lot of scoring power available in 2025. So it could be well worth spending a late round pick in a speculative manner on a tight end. And these are the ones that you could be worth taking a chance on. You could take your pick in Carolina, either Jatavian Sanders or Mitchell Evans, with just Tommy Tremble to get to the top of the Panthers tight end depth chart for the likes of Sanders and Evans. Tremble has not averaged 20 yards a game or had more than 3 season TDs in his 4 years in the league. So there's not much production to overcome there to become the tight end 1. Sanders himself averaged more than 20 yards a game in his first full season in the league last season. And Evans is an intriguing draft pick and may have found a good landing spot if he shows up well in pre-season. So taking a late round punt on one of those two to become Carolina's leading tight end might pay off here. Next one up is Ben Sinnott in Washington. Now, he had a quiet rookie season, very quiet, almost anonymous. But Zach Ertz is in his mid-30s now, and John Bates is primarily a blocking tight end. So should Ertz's numbers drop off, the Commanders' second-round pick of 2024 could have a chance at a breakout season in his sophomore year in the NFL. And the early signs in camp is that he's been showing up well, so he could be one to take a chance on. Another one who may have fallen into a good spot is Brenton Strange in Jacksonville. He was another second rounder, this time from the 2023 draft, but with Evan Engram gone, he now tops the Jags tight end depth chart. So Strange has an opportunity to establish himself as a viable fantasy tight end in 2025. And finally, Mason Taylor, the New York Jets, another rookie from a rich vein of an NFL bloodline, son of Jason Taylor, etc., etc. Taylor now has a shot at being the Jets' primary weapon at tight end in 2025. And with the Jets being thin in terms of wide receiver talent, that could make him a tight end to watch out for in 2025, and certainly in dynasty leagues as value as well. So that's my tight end look. I've given you the sort of 24 to cover you down to tight end 2, and another sort of 4 or 5 options as late round flyers that might work out well for you. So that's my look at tight end. That really wraps up my look at fantasy for now. And I'm really not going to come back to it until just before week 1, where I'll give you who I think the players to watch out for in week 1, which will become a regular weekly feature from me, the bench and sit 'em type thing. So I'll be back with that just before the season starts. But that pretty much wraps up my look at the fantasy picture. So bear that in mind if you're about to draft or have a draft coming up in the future, or if you've already drafted for trade purposes. So that's it for me on tight ends. I'll be back shortly when we come back into the reality world, and I'll start looking at what I call state of the division addresses. So I'll have a look at each of the 8 divisions and how they might pan out. I'll be back with the first of those in the next day or in the coming days. All right, take care now.